For column quality, it shows you a percentage of your data that is valid. Your data could be valid and still contains error. It could be valid and still contains duplicates. It could be valid and still contains null values. Rather, it could be valid and still contains missing values. We'll get to see that when we move on to the practical session. I moved on to the next point, which is column distribution. Column distribution shows you the values in a column that are distributed, how many distinct and unique values. Distinct values are a count of values, including nulls and empty. Nulls and duplicate, those are distinct values. While unique values are a count of value that appears just once. I'll go over that again. Unique value are a count of values that appears just once, while distinct values are a count of values that appears more than once. This includes duplicates in your data set. They can also include null values. Having said that, I have an example on my screen. I have red, blue, green, and green. So I have 5 values here. Distinct values is going to count. Even if I have red values repeated, it's going to count red once. It's going to count blue once. Blue is just once. So it's going to count red repeated values once. It's going to count blue once, and it's going to count green once. So this is to tell you that I have 3 distinct values here: red, blue, and green. So it's counting red and green just once, even if they are repeated. And then for unique values are a count of values that appears just once. You can see that of my screen here, blue is the only value that appears just once. So blue is a unique value. I'll go over that again. Unique value are a count of values that appears just once, while distinct values are a count of values that appears more than once, including duplicates and null values. Moving forward, I have the column profiling. Column profiling shows the count of statistics for each columns and field. So this is where we get to see we have maximum, we have minimum, we have count, sum, and so on. So we are briefly going to practice some data cleaning exercise. In this exercise, we are going to, for the data set we'll be working on, we are going to perform basic data cleaning today. Let's say you are working as a data analyst in a company and you are given a data set to clean. The stakeholder is telling you that some employees refuse to disclose their gender. You need to assign a generic gender status to these employees. You are tasked with that responsibility. And you are being told that some employees, some of us like humans, we don't like revealing our gender status. Or let me just say something common could just be your age. You don't like telling people about your age. So you're answering a questionnaire and there's options for, let's say, 20 to 25 years, 26 to 30 years, and there is an option for not stated. So most people will likely seek the not stated option. So these are one of the tasks you are being assigned as a data analyst. So those that did not reveal their age, you can just give them a generic gender status. Moving forward, we are already tasked with another responsibilities. However, some employees are without salary because they're no longer with the company. You will need to take these employees out. So peradventure, we had some employees that are no longer working with the companies, and this is where you have been asked to take these employees out. And lastly, some departments are indicated as nulls. These departments would also need to be taken out. So before I come back to data transformation, we are going to see practically how to go about data cleaning. And some data cleaning we are going to perform today. We are going to remove duplicated values. We also get to go into data profiling, convert data types, and we talk about column distribution, column quality, and column profile in Power BI practically. So let's practice. I have my Power BI desktop loud and clean, and yesterday I walked you through the user interface of the Power BI desktop. So I'm just going to go ahead to import my data, the different import options on your canvas. So I'm just going to go ahead to get my data. Popularly, we'll be working with the Excel workbook.
Hello, Awak.
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you move closer to your mic? I think you're a bit far from your mic.
Can you hear me now, loud and clear?
Move a bit closer.
I am closer to my mic.
Are you using an earpiece?
I'm using headsets.
Headset? Was it what you used yesterday?
No.
Maybe you should just resort to what you used yesterday. I think it was better yesterday than what you carry out. So, thank you very much. Hello, I
Yes,
want to
I
confirm
can
if you're
hear you.
okay. Good. We're not able to hear what you're saying. So
Okay, so please, can you hear me too, loud and clear?
this is perfect. Thank you.
All right. So we were talking about, sorry about the interruption with network. I'm really sorry about that. So briefly, we were talking about data cleaning and data we are not yet moved into data transformation. So we just want to talk briefly about data cleaning, and we are going to be going into the practical session in a few minutes. So I'm just going to click on my get data options. You can have different sources to get your data from. So I'm just going to select on Excel workbook. And for my data cleaning, I'm going to select the HR cleaning. So I have my data set connected, and you can see here that I selected the HR data set. So I have it here title sheet 1. So for me to have a preview of this data, you can see no item is selected for preview. For me to have a preview of this data, I'm just going to check this. I'm just going to have this selected, and this will just show you a preview of my data. You can see that at the bottom here, my load and transform option is not enabled. So now how do I enable this option? I enable this option by having click on this box here. So this box will help us enabled the option. So I'm just going to click on transform. And yesterday, like I earlier said, I don't know if I've said this already, but I'm just going to be saying this now. Most of the times you'll always be transforming your data. So if your data is clean and you are certain your data is clean, you can always go ahead to load your data into Power BI and start with your report. So I'm just going to transform this data. I have my Power Query editor window opened, and your Power Query is where all your data cleaning or your data transformation is being done. Your Power Query editor is a different service in the Power BI desktop. If I should hover around, if I have this selected, you would see that this is my Power BI desktop, and I'm just going to switch back to my Power Query editor. So for my data cleaning, I'm going to simply rename this first of all to sheet H, let's say HR. I'm just have that selected. Let's start off with the columns. You can see that my column headers are not descriptive. My column headers are not descriptive. I cannot really tell what this particular column stands for. And coming to, we have here column 2, column 3, column 4. So I'm starting off by using the first row as headers. Looking at the first row, you can see that I have a name, gender, department, and salary. So this should take the position of the column headers. You know, when you are typing your data in Excel, data is imported from Excel workbook. You know, Excel does not have anything like column headers. They just have rows and they just have columns and see A4, B3, and so on. So there are 2 steps you can do that. Either on your home tab, you can just go to the extreme end on the transform ribbon, and you can just select use first row as headers. So please, what's the question? Prince is raising up his hands. To recap, is it from, I don't know, from where to where? are just talking about data cleaning and data transformation. And I've imported my data into Power BI editor. So, okay, I'm just going to close this window and import my data again. So I have my Power BI desktop. I have my Power BI desktop open, clean and clear. So I'm just going to head to my get data options. There are different options for you to get data from. I can easily select here from Excel workbook. You can see import data from Excel and so on. So whichever options you want to work with, that's fine. So I'm just going to quickly select Excel workbook. And for Excel workbook, I'm going to be selecting the HR data. I can either have this highlighted, I'll click on open, and I can just double click from the window. When I have this open, you can see I don't have any preview here. For me to have a preview, I'm just going to select the sheet 1. For the sheet 1, you can see that I don't have my load and I don't have my transform selection enabled. For that to be enabled, I'm just going to click on the checkbox and I'm going to click on transform. So for the transform, this is my data query editor where all data cleaning, all data transformation is being carried out. You can also go through the applied steps. So this is the source. It's telling me that the data source is from Excel workbook. You can see the details here, Excel workbook. And this is the navigator window. This is the navigator window. And finally, we are in Excel. So this is just the source, is just the metadata. That doesn't really concern us. So we're just going to move ahead to data cleaning. Starting off, we can see that my column headers are not descriptive enough. I have column 1, I have column 2, I have column 3, and so on. For my row 1, I have 0 name, gender, and department. So this is for you to assume that my row 1 should be my column header. So how do I fix that? I'm just going to start off. You can do that using 2 ways. On your home tab, you can head straight down to use first row as headers. You can see use first row as headers. If you want to see this, you can see that I have my first row used as headers. Another method for you to do that is to just use this drop down. You see this table view beside this. I can just use the drop down, and when I use the drop down, you can just easily use first row as header. So whichever method you want to work with, are just 2 methods of doing that, not really method. Anyhow you want to go about that, just like shortcuts you have on your keyboard, you can do a lot of it here. Moving forward, I've had my first row as header selected. Oh, the first thing I should have done was to rename the sheet to HR data. So let's just say HR data. I'm going to press enter, and the if change also would be affected here. You can see that I talk about that my column headers were not descriptive. That's why we had, what we did we even have? In the data, let's go to the navigation window. We had column 1, column 2, column 3. So these, our data, were the column headers were not descriptive. So for you to go ahead to make your column headers descriptive, just go to your home tab. On your home tab, use first row as headers, or come to your this table. On the table view, we have a icon that looks like a table here. Use this drop down and you'll see use first row as header. So I'm just going to go back to the after steps. So another thing I want to make emphasis on, whatever steps you apply in Power Query, the Power Query editor, whatever transformation, whatever cleaning is being carried out, Power Query automatically outlines a step for you. You get to see, oh, this is what I'm doing. These are the steps I have done. So you can see that the first thing I did was to promote my headers, and that's why we're having promoted headers here. And you could always see this setting icon. So if I should click on the setting icon, promote this does not really concern us, but use all first role as headers. I'm just going to click on cancel. The next step we're going to take, the next, I know we are working with data cleaning. You can see that for this, my row column one, my column one is not really, is not what we want. We're just having 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is just an unwanted column in our data set. It's just an unwanted column, and we're just going to get rid of that. So for us to get rid of that, there are also two methods of doing that. Okay, briefly, so you might be joining that my screen is not visible. It could be your network at your end if other people are still seeing my screen. And you asked a question about, yes, whenever you effect some changes in your data set, it does not affect your original data set. This one is just existing during the duration of your data. So when you go ahead to effect all the change, you save it and you published it, not publish rather, and you save it to, you close and apply to Power BI desktop, you create your report. The raw data is still available. It doesn't have these changes. I don't even understand what I mean. Your raw data does not have these changes. You can still share your raw data to others. But you that as like now that I'm working, I can go ahead to clean this data, import it to Power BI desktop, go ahead to build my report. But the raw data still does not have these changes. Having said that, we cleaned the first one, which was promoted headers. I made mention of that your column here is just an unwanted column. So I'm just going to go ahead to take this column out. To take my column out, still on my home tab, you can see that I have the manage column options. You see an option for either choose column, and you also see an option for remove column. So if I use the drop down, you will see two options. There are two subsections. We have remove columns and we have remove other columns. And what does this entail? I currently have the first column selected. If I have this highlighted and I select remove columns, is going to remove this column. But if I should have this column one selected and I select remove other columns, it simply means leave column one, remove all these other columns. So we are just going to go about that briefly. So I have my column one selected, and if I should select this second one, remove other columns, you would see that, oh, no, I don't have to. So let me come back to the last step. If I should have my column selected, I use the drop down and I select remove other columns. It simply means that I have other columns removed and I just want to leave only column one. So for me to take us back to where we were previously, I can always come here. Power BI enables an option for you to delete. It's not like undo, redo. It also enables an option for you to delete all the steps and go over that again. So I'm just going to go ahead to delete this because I don't want to remove all other columns. I want to remove column one. So I can use this drop down to select remove column one. Whenever you want to remove your columns, make sure that column you want to remove is highlighted. So there are two methods of doing that. Either you come to your home tab or you have that column selected, you right click on your keyboard and you would see remove column. So I have the first column removed. Before we moved on to clean order, we already were in data cleaning. I want to briefly talk about, on my view tabs, I want to talk about column distribution and column quality. So like I said on my slides, called data exploration. Like I said on my slide, data exploration. For data exploration, I'm just going to uncheck this column quality. Okay, let's start off with column quality. In my definition, column quality shows you a percentage of your column that is valid, error, and empty. So you can see that, just take for example, look at this gender column. You can see that my gender column here shows me 96% valid, error is 0%, and empty is 4%. This empty 4% is accounting for this null value you can see. That's why we are having empty is 4%. So I'm going to uncheck for column quality. I'm going to check for column distribution. For column distribution shows you distinct and unique values. Distinct values are count of values that appears more than once, where I gave example of the colors red, blue, and green. While unique values are a count of values that appears just once. So for an example, just look at my location. Just look at my location column. Specifically, this one unique value you are seeing here is accounting for this little bar you have here. Is accounting for this little bar you have here. So that's why you are seeing here one unique. So these bars are, I put it in kind of a distribution. It is a distribution. So for an example, if we have Lagos, Abuja, Kaduna, and Akwa Ibom. So maybe if the employees coming from Lagos, I believe Lagos is the state with the highest number of employees, you would have here the largest bar. Seconded by maybe, let's say, Kaduna is second to the largest, you have the second bar. And then let's say Abuja, third bar. And if one person was just coming from Akwa Ibom, for an example, so you have it one unique. That one unique refers to Akwa Ibom and is accounting for this little bar. See, so this is bar distribution. So if I overround, you would see I have distinct values, I have unique values. So when you overround these bars, it will show you distinct and it will show you unique values. I overround here 4 distinct values and 1 unique value. So I don't know if I have any question before I attempt to question. Let's take the last one, which is column profile. So I'm just going to uncheck the box for column distribution and have my gender column selected. For my gender column, you can see that when we talk of column statistics, I could call column statistics like column profile, which is it shows you the statistics of that column. So it shows you your distinct values. It could mean that I call column profile jack of all trades because it has done the work of column quality and column distribution. So it has showed us the count of values. Is it showing us error? Yes, but it's showing us empty. It shows us error, it shows us empty, but it doesn't show us value. For column distribution, this is your value distribution. So it's also playing the role of a data distribution and column quality and column distribution. So when we talk of minimum and maximum values in text, a maximum value in text is the latest. For example, in alphabetical order, we have A to Z. Minimum values should be A, B, C, while maximum values should be X, Y, Z. So you can see that M comes before, we have F after M. So minimum value is going to be female and maximum value is going to be male. It is followed in ascending order and also followed in a descending order. When we talk of, let's say for an example, in salary, you already know, when we talk of minimum and maximum, it simply refers to largest numbers and lowest numbers. But when we talk of minimum and maximum in text, it means that, the letters for A, B, C, they would fall. If we say we have A, B, C, and D, maximum would be D, while minimum would be A. So having said that, we have looked at column distribution to show you empty spaces 41, distinct 3, unique 0, and so on, to also show you count 1000, error, and 0. So we don't have any error in this data. Moving forward, we have talked briefly about the column quality, column distribution. So I'm just going to have this check. have my column profile checked? No. Yes, for column profile, you would also notice that column profile is specific to that column. It only shows you details for a selected column. So it's only displaying information for the gender column compared to column distribution and column quality that displays information for all columns. On this one only displays information for a selected value, for a selected column rather. So having said that, you can see minimum AB, this is A, and maximum is Z. So we're just going to uncheck this column distribution, column profile. I'm just going to leave column quality and column distribution check. So before, I don't know if I have any question. We are going to be coming to how to handle null values. So moving forward, we're going to be cleaning our data. It's time for data cleaning. And this is the steps in a data analyst slide that some people don't usually like. We started off by removing unwanted column in our data. So the next, I can also use this drop down, and you would have a preview of how all your columns looks like. I can also click on load more and so on. So I'm just going to click on cancel. At the bottom, you'll see I have two options: column profiling based on top 1,000 rows. That's the default. So I want to change this to column profile based on entire data set. Having said that, part of the what we're asked to do in this data set says some employees refuse to disclose their gender. You would need to assign a generic gender status to these employees. I'm going to be starting off with that. So I'm going to be starting off with my gender column. I'm just going to use this drop down. You could see list may be incomplete. Just click on load more. So we don't need null values. If we open this data in an Excel workbook, these null values are empty cells in an Excel workbook. So Power BI interprets empty values as null values in a data set. So I'm going to be starting off by removing this null value. So before we remove this null value, we are just going to be checking the columns for us to clean. So we have the gender column to work with, and we also have the departments column. We were asked to take out some departments refuse to disclose. So we also asked to take this out. You see that lastly, some departments are indicated as nulls. So these departments would also need to be taken out. So for an example, let's say we did not see this null value. Power BI interprets empty spaces as your itemized null value. I know you would tell me that this is a null value. Power BI does not recognize a capitalized null value. It only recognizes an italicized null value. So having said that, let's say for an example, this null capitalized value was not there, and you can see that here is telling us valid is 100%. What do you do? So this is where it's always advisable to use your drop down when you are working with data sets. Use your drop down, go through your data. You can see that we have null values. I'm just saying for an example, if this null we are having here was not in the first 3 rows, maybe it was like 100 row 200, and you would just assume that because it's showing us valid 100%, error 0%, you would just assume that this data set, this column in particular, is valid 100%. No, this could literally mar your analysis. So it's always advisable you use your drop down to check what you have on your columns. You check about the details in your column. So I'm just going to click on cancel. And we also asked to take the null values for salary column out. For the gender column, we're asked to assign a generic gender status to the gender column. So for me to do that, on my transform tab, I'm just going to select replace value. The replace value replace existing values in the currently selected column with specified new values. I don't do much of theory, but it's also good to learn theory. So I'm just going to click back to I'm going to have my replace value selected. So they're asking me value to find. I'm just going to say no value, value to replace with. We should just assign generic danger status. So let's just say non-binary. So when I have these, my null values, these are values to find. I'm telling my Power BI columns, wherever you see null value in that column, replace it with non-binary. So I'm just going to click on OK. So when I click on OK, you see that the null values has been replaced with non-binary. If I go to the previous step, this is a null value 4%. So if I go to after, you would see this is the values have been replaced. So null value, this little bad distribution is accounting for the null values. You can see we have 3 distribution. So if I should use this drop down, we have female, male, and non-binary. So that's why we are having a 3 distribution. We have male, female, and non-binary. So I hope you understand that. I'll be taking questions briefly. Pardon me. I'll go to department column. On the departments column, do I have a question? When it shows list is not complete, just click on load more. Just click on load more. Having said that, I'm just going to move on to the department column. On the department column, we were asked to take out the null values. But before we take out the null values, because this null value here is not a valid entry. So if I should go ahead to say I want to just take it out, I would literally end up deleting this entire column. So this null is not a valid entry. Power BI recognizes an italicized nulls. It does not recognize a capitalized nulls. Nulls in upper cases, no. So this is not a valid entry. For this entry to be valid, rather, Power BI is taking this null value as a valid entry. It's taking it just as, oh, there's a department called null, there's a department called sales, engineering, and null. So this null value to Power BI is a valid entry. So for us to remove that, we are first of all going to, I can have this selected, go to my replace value. Value to find automatically is going to find null value. So I'm just going to replace with the small null values. You can also expand to use advanced options where you say replace using anyone you want to work with. This is outside the scope of our study. Match entire cells content simply means that anywhere you see this null value, replace it with it. So I'm just going to click on OK. I did not match, so I'm just going to click on OK. So you can see that for now we have 3% null values. For us to take these null values out, I'm just going to I'm just going to use this drop down. Using the drop down, I'm just going to say remove empty. I earlier said that in Excel, if you're opening this data set in Excel, this space, where Power BI is interpreting nulls are basically empty data sets in your data. So I'm just going to click on remove empty values. So you will not see the null values again. For the salary column, you can see clearly that I'm having a data types. I'm having a text data type. So this is not correct. I'm also going to clean this data type. Salary, we have dollars here. So dollars should be represented in this fixed decimal number because we're having a dollar sign here. So it should be represented in a fixed decimal number. But now it is represented in a text decimal number. So this is not accurate. But before I go ahead to change the data types, I earlier said that data types, I'll go over that again. Data types are basically a representation of what you have on your columns. So I have my name is text, my gender is text, department is text, location is text, and so on. So if you had numeric, let's just say 1 to 3, what you have on that column would just be, let's say, whole number or decimal numbers. So for this column, I'm having is amount, is currency. So I'm going to replace this with fixed decimal number. For you to do that, for example, what if, for example, we had salaries, maybe we're working with more than 20 columns. You cannot go to each one of them to be checking the columns. So for you to be able to do them automatically, you can, on your transform tab, you just have this. So let's just have this highlighted, Control A. You have it highlighted, and you go to, on your transform tab, you are going to select detect data types automatically. So when you select detect data types, it will automatically detect data type of the currently selected column. So if I should have this highlighted, the data type has been detected, but this is not always 100% accurate. You could still see that my data type for my salary column is not detected. So I'm just going to delete this step. Just have my salary column selected. On my files and options, okay, no, first of all, I'm going to go to, I have to select fixed decimal numbers. So when I have that selected, you basically see errors in this data, and errors would be represented. You could see if I hover around this red icon, I have 945 errors in this data. So what if you had just assumed, when we were in the previous step, you just assume this data set is clean and you just go ahead to visualize this data. So you go through your data, you clean your data for it to be accurate, so that it will not mar your analysis. So I'm just going to go to the after step. For me to get rid of these errors, whenever you experience error like this, there is no point to panic. You don't have what to panic about. I'm just going to go to files and options. For files and options, I'm going to select options. For my options, I'm going to select, because I'm working with a current file, so I'm going to select regional settings. This data set is trying to interpret a Nigerian format. You could see local for import. It's trying to use Nigerian regional set. It's trying to use Nigeria to interpret the date and time imported. So this, when you saw dollars, it simply means that this data set was key in United States. So I'm just going to search for English United States. No. English United States. So I'm going to have English United States selected. I'm going to click OK. So having done that, you still have seen that there is no effect. There's no changes affected here. I'm just go ahead. I'm going to delete this step. Come back to the data types. I'm also going to select fixed decimal number. And my error has been replaced. As my error message has been fixed rather. So you can see that my salary column is now clean. But we still have null values because some employees are no longer with the company, and these employees also need to be taken out. So I'm going to go ahead. Do I have a question? I should repeat the process. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead to delete this. Let's go over that again. My salary column has ABC. ABC is text now, it's not numeric. So I'm supposed to have a numeric data type here. Like I earlier said, data types are a representation of what you have on your column headers. So I'm just going to use this drop down. I'm going to select fixed decimal number. So this has been fixed because on my files and option settings, you go, if you have errors at your end, just go to your options. Let that load. For your options, you have to come to current file because you are working with a current file. You see, we have global and we have current file. So we are going to be working with regional settings of this current file. It's not all files that will be coming in from the United States. So always have your current file regional settings selected. Use your drop down and select United States, depending on the region, depending on where this data set was imputed. So I'm just going to click on OK. We already fixed that. So when you have error on your end, just go to files and settings. So anyway, before I proceed, let me briefly just take just 5 minutes questions before I proceed. We had dollar sign. Let me just go over, I think replace. You could see that I had dollar signs here. It simply means that this is dollars. That's United States. This data set was in United States. And you importing it in you have imported into Power BI. Is in now trying to interpret for Nigeria because this is your location. I am in Nigeria. So for me to, and I'm having errors because it could be that this data set, their time zone is different from ours. So for you to fix the errors, just go back to your files and options on your Power BI, go to regional settings and fix the error problem. I hope I've answered your question. How did I know the data set is from US? When I imported this data, didn't you see a dollar sign beside this? Are you not seeing dollar signs? When you see dollar signs, doesn't it simply represent United States? Or if you saw Naira, you would definitely know this is Nigeria. So those are just some irrelevant questions. So the other person said, is there any instruction that comes with data cleaning? There are some organizations that you might work with, and there are no specific instructions for you to clean this data. And there are also some organizations that you work with, and there are specific instructions on what they want you to do with the data. As a data analyst, your responsibility is also already tagged to the responsibility of data cleaning. So you should be conversant, more versatile in that field. I'm just going to go to the after step. The location in the, you don't, oh my God. This data set is trying to interpret when I change it from dollar to, when I change it from, where we had, let me just delete this step. We had it in dollars. The data type here is ABC, which is not accurate. So I have to use fixed decimal number. This is dollars. So if I have my fixed decimal number selected, you can see that this data type has changed to dollar sign. This data was key in United States, and it's trying to interpret Nigerian, should I say, time zone, which is going to show us errors. So for you to fix that, you go to the regional settings. Because you saw that we had dollars, most of the error message might just be your regional settings. So I've repeated and repeated over and over again. So I won't go over that again. Yes, we have different types of data types. We have the text data types. I can use the drop down. We have decimal, fixed. We also have dates. We also have date and time. Anyway, we'll be coming to that. If time permits, we'll also get to see a data time. So if we had time here and this time was not using the right data types, you also get to change it to a date time as well. So having said that, we are moving on. I've spent far more time. We don't have time. We just have barely 1 hour left, and I've not even gone into data transformation. So I'm going to simply move on to the next column, which we're supposed to do what? Remove the null value. So I'm just going to use the drop down and I'm going to remove. You see, we have null values here. Anyway, you can also uncheck this. This is me filtering. So let's filter to the columns we want to see for the null values. So I'm just going to click OK. You can always filter your columns. You want to see, oh, how many rows am I having? How many rows am I having null values? So rows for null values are just 41 rows. So you can always filter your data. So I'm just going to use this drop down. This filter icon, filter now, already know filter used in the kitchen. So it looks like filter. So I'm just going to, this is what the symbols looks like. So I'm just going to use the drop down and I'm going to select clear filtering. So that filtering has been cleared. So I'm just going to go ahead to remove the empty value. So that has been removed. And I'm just going to go to location column. For the location, I'm going to make emphasis on this. For this location column, you can see that I'm having here 4 distinct value, 1 unique value. So it's always advisable to use your drop down. I've made emphasis on this. Use your drop down. Know the details of what you have in your data. It's a very tedious, when we talk of data cleaning, it's a tedious process. Know what you have specifically in your columns. So you can see that I have Abuja, I have Kaduna, I have Lagos. Is it Lagos, or I have Lagos, for an example? So what if this Lagos, what if we did not use this drop down? You will think that we have 4 locations, meanwhile we have just 3 locations. So like I earlier said, data sets are keyed in by humans and humans are prone to errors. So it could mean that someone mistakenly, instead of typing Lagos, the person mistakenly maybe while sleeping, or the person is exhausted or tired, and the person type in Lagos with a 0. So it's always advisable to use your drop down. So it's always advisable to use your drop down. Go through your column details. So for me to take, you already know how to work with that. We will be working with a replace values. So I'm going to just go over that again. So if I just assume that, oh, this location we have valid is 100%, error is 0%, and empty here is 0%, what do I do? The data set is clean now. There's nothing to do. Let's go ahead to load our data. No, use your drop down. Go through your data. So this could tell you that this data set was mistakenly keyed in 0 instead of an O, the Lagos spelling. So I'm just going to have this column selected. You can also replace your values by having this column header selected. You just right click and you see options for replace value. That can also be done by going to your home tab. On your home tab, you also see options for replace values. But quickly, if you love being lazy, you can just use location like me. I'll just right click and I'm going to select replace values. So value to find was Lagos with 0 and A's. Value to replace with is going to be Lagos. So I'm just going to click on OK. So these are the values I have replaced with. Using these, so when we use this drop down, you can see that now we have 3 locations instead of 4 locations. Go through your data set. It is very pertinent. Just going to click on council, and we have the last column where it is rating. We have average, good, not rated, poor, very good, and very poor. So this column is fairly clean. We have used the drop down. The spellings are accurate, the spellings are correct. So I'm just going to click on council. So do I have any question? Do I have any question? Yes, of course. When you take rid of a null value, it removes that entire row. It removes the entire rows that contains the null values. I have repeated location, and repeated location. We are working based on time. I earlier said that when I was importing this data into Power BI, my data type here shows text. You cannot have text in a numeric column. You cannot have text as a data type in a numeric column. This is a numeric column, 88, 68. These are not text. Texts are very good. You know what is text now? Lagos, male, female. The one with letters, your alphabet are text. This salary is a numeric column, so it cannot be a text column. For you to get rid of that, if I had simply changed this data type, if I had simply changed data type to fixed decimal number, and I did not have any error, let me go to, for example, was it here? Not there. Let me see. Was it? I don't even know the steps again. But anyway, if you had to go ahead to change this and you did not see any error, there is no issue with it. I'm trying to tell you that whenever you encounter errors, in your data sets, especially with salary, I will not just say the column, specifically this salary or time zone, always go to your regional settings. It could be that they are using US time zone. It could be that this data was in US. So always, whenever you encounter errors, it's mostly because of regional settings. So I hope I've answered all the questions. So if there's any other more questions to answer. Okay, I don't think I'll go through all these questions because the session is a recorded session. So I'm just specifically just going to just 3 questions. It's a recorded session. You can always go on YouTube after the session and listen to it again. For distinct values, I'm just going to use my slide to explain distinct values in more detail. I'm just going to, let me minimize this. For distinct values are count of values that appears more than once. I have my red, blue, green. I have 5 values here. A distinct value is going to count red once, it's going to count blue 2, and it's going to count blue 3. Even if green is repeating, it's going to count green just once. It's just for example, we can have red, blue, green. It's going to count red once, blue once, green once. So you're having just 3 distinct values. Even if there is a repetition, is giving us a count of value once. But when we talk of a unique value, just by the words entails unique, the repetition is just once. So blue here is repeating just once compared to red, green, and so we'll definitely have 3. We'll just have here 3 distinct value, which is red 1, blue 2, green 3, and we'll just have one unique value, which is blue. So I hope I've answered your question. If I've answered your question, just let me know. I've answered question for distinct and unique value. Okay, if that's, I think, let me go back to change type 2. Let's use this location. Let me turn on the view tab, statistics profile. You can see here that I have distinct value 4. Is counting Kaduna 1, even if we have a lot of repetitions. So let me use this drop down. Kaduna is repeating. You see we have Kaduna repeating. Kaduna, Lagos. Is count, even if they are repeating, is counting it as just once. Abuja is repeating as well, is counting Abuja as just once. Also, Lagos, we have Lagos. and so on. We have Abuja, Abuja, and so on. So even if there are repeating values, it's going to count that values as just once. It's more like distinct count. You don't try to make me digress. That's more like distinct count. So when we talk of unique values, you notice that if I should use this drop down, we have Abuja, Lagos, Kaduna, and this other Lagos that is incorrectly spelled. This other Lagos with 0 is a unique value because it is appearing just once. This is a unique value. It's appearing just once. You can see it's appearing just once. But when we had Kaduna, Abuja, and Lagos, they were repeating. So it's going to count Kaduna once, Abuja once, Lagos once, and even if this one is repeating once, we have 4 distinct. 1, 2, 3, 4. But when we talk of unique, unique is only going to count that value that appeared just once. So I hope I've answered your question. If it's issue with location, I will not respond to that one. We are not working with SQL. SQL is outside the scope of our study. Pardon me. What was the task assigned to you? The task says, let's go over that. The task here says, some employees are without salary because they're no longer with the company. You would need to take those employees out. You cannot afford having no values in your data set. It will mar your analysis. When we talk of data, it's for you to give us accurate data. We need accuracy. So you filter out null values, you filter out abnormalities. Sometimes people filter out outliers in your data. So you have to take out those values that contains null values. So I hope I've answered your question. You cannot have no. How is it nice for you to, when maybe someone is analyzing and your visuals is displaying, your visual is displaying no value? It means that you did not clean your data. You're not a good data analyst. Importing the data is very simple. Maximum, and minimum. For maximum and minimum, when we talk of text in maximum, I know you are going to tell me that Kaduna here has the highest. Okay, we can see statistics say that Kaduna is 376, Abuja is 349, that is the count, and Lagos is 260. When we talk of minimum and maximum in a text values, it is not done based on numbers. For an example, if we were dealing with salary, you would see that the highest figure is maximum, the lowest figure is minimum. But when we deal with text column, we have for Kaduna is the one with the highest number of employees. So we have 376. It is not rating it that way. It is rated based alphabetically. Abuja has Abuja. I know you are going to tell me that this Lagos is the one that is supposed to be minimum and Kaduna is the one supposed to be maximum. No. When we talk of minimum and maximum in text values, it is rated based on alphabetical arrangement. A before B, C before D. Now, we have K comes L, K comes before L. So you can see that we have KLM, KLM. So L is the latest in terms of a descending order. So L would come as the maximum value. If we had Z for an example, Z would be the maximum. So A here comes first because A later, A now, A before B. So A comes first. Maximum here is Lagos. So I hope I've answered your question. In less than, let me just give you 5 minutes. We are just going to move on to the next thing. You were not asked to replace the null value with another value. We were just asked to take it out. So I hope I've answered all the questions. For column statistics, I've just explained now, minimum and maximum. I think I've answered that. So we have answered that. So when you are confident that your data set is clean, you are certain, oh, I've cleaned this data. I will not have issues with my stakeholders. You can always go ahead to close and apply your data. So if I should click close and apply, it's going to redirect me to Power BI window where you can create your reports, you can create your charts. So at your own end, you can click on close and apply. So I want to start off data transformation right away. So when you are done cleaning your data, go ahead to click on close and apply. So it's going to apply those changes to the Power BI desktop. I won't be doing that. So I want to import another set of data. So moving on, we're going to talk about data transformation. And briefly, if time permits me, data transformation refers to the process of manipulating and reshaping data to make it more suitable for analysis. I'm not much of a theoretical person, so I'm just going to go through that. When we talk of data transformation, it's not data cleaning. This is where, for an example, you can append your query, you can append your query, you can match your queries, you can do a lot of interesting transformations with it. So for common data transformations include combined data, transpose data, pivot and unpivot, group by, merge column, split column, adding custom formatting. So those are the common data transformation. So we're just going to be taking them one after the other. So I can just leave this at, let's say, data cleaning. So we know that this is a data cleaning that we did. So the next one we want to see, we want to start off with, I'll be hovering around this. So I just want to start off with common data transformation. So I'm just going to go over to mine. I'm just going to select my Excel workbook. I'm going to have this selected. I'm going to start off with the append data transformation. So I'm going to have that selected. I'm going to have this selected. So for data transformation, we are starting off with append. For you to, when we talk of appending your queries, anyway, let me first of all have this selected. And I'm going to click on OK. So I have these three colors selected. I'm just going to click on OK. What does appending query means? When you hear the word append query, what do we mean by appending query? Am I having charts? I'm saying 28 charts. So we are going to start off by appending these queries. You can see that I have my legal table. This is my legal data. I have legal. So each of these data has 6 columns and 9 rows. I come to the product management. The product management has 6 columns and 7 rows. And we also have the sales table. The sales column, that's a sales table. It has 6 columns and 6 rows. So starting off, the first one has, these cells has 6 rows. So the product management has how many rows? 7 rows. And the legal theme has 9 rows. So we are going to combine 6 plus 7 plus 9. It simply means that we are going to append this query into 22 rows. So instead of them having 6, 6, 7, and 6, rather 9, anyhow, we are going to have it 22 rows. So when we talk of append queries, what do we mean by appending queries? Append queries is a method that combines data from multiple queries or tables into a single data set. So this is going to combine these 3 queries. You can see I have 4 queries. So it's going to combine legal, product, and salary into one query, into a single data set like we had with this HR data set. It's going to multiply the numbers of rows. So that's what I mean by append. If you don't understand what I mean by append, let me know. So for you to append these columns must have the same headers. They must have the same column name and the same data types. What do I mean by that? I have name, gender. I had 6 columns and 9 rows, so they must have the same data types. If your data, yes, you can see salary. I'm having this data type. This is text. This is whole number data type for salary. That was not specified. So they must have the same data types and the same column headers. Do I have a chart? Okay, so it must have the same data types and the same salary. You can see for my product management, the column headers has to be the same. So when you are trying to append your columns must have the same column names and the same data type. So if they don't have the same data type, you will not be able to append it. You must likely have an error. So these column headers are the same: name, gender, department, and salary. So I'm going to simply on my transform tab, I'm going to select, let me take this below. From on my transform tab, I'm going to have on my transform tab, on my home tab rather, if you go at the tail end, you'll see on the combined ribbon, you will see append queries. This is what we'll be working with. So we see append queries. We have 2 options: append queries and append queries as new. I'll just go over the 2 together. So append queries combines rows from 2 or more tables into an existing table. So for an example, if I want to use the first option, if I'm going with the first option, it's going to append sales and products table into this legal table. This is an existing table. So if I should select append queries as new, it's going to combine these 3 tables into a new separate table. The original table would remain unchanged. I don't know if you understand me. Before I proceed with the practical session, please understand me. If I use the first option, append queries, it's going to append because I have my legal table selected. So let's see practically, I have append queries selected. So because we want to append, this is just for 2 tables. So we are going to select the 3 or more tables option. So you are seeing here legal current. It's because this row, you can see I have an error symbol here. It is because this row is currently selected. So now it's asking me for tables to append. I want to append the products. Don't mind the HR. This one was used for data cleaning. So I'm going to append the product and the sales table into this legal table. But if I had selected, I'm just going to click on cancel. So if I had go ahead to say append queries as new, if I have that selected, append queries as new, this is the first step. If it's just 2 tables, so if it is just two tables, if I had just two tables, let's say legal and product management, I will just go ahead, use my drop down and select maybe the second table, and I'm going to select OK. But I don't want to append two tables. We are appending 3 tables. So I'm just for 3 tables. If you click on 3, we want to append all these 3 tables. So you can see legal, it is because I already select this from these 2 tables. So you have it automatically selected here. So if I go ahead to say I want to have my sales table and I click on add, if I click on OK, you will see a new query here. So currently we have 4 queries. You will see the feed query. So I don't know if you understand. I'm just going to click on cancel. I'm going to use the first method. Whichever method you work with, you understand better. So let's work with append query. So it's going to append these 2 tables into existing tables. So when I work with merge, I'm going to use merge as new. So you see practically what I mean by new table. So because I have my legal table currently selected, I'm just going to highlight this and the. I'm just going to have the product table highlighted. I'm going to have this sales table highlighted. I'm going to click on add. So let's say you made a mistake. Let me toggle this off. Let's say you make a mistake and you want to take this back. You want to take it back. There is option here for, there is option here for remove. So I can remove. I have this selected, I can remove. So, but I'm going to take this back. I'm going to click on add. So if this was by mistake, you didn't want to add this table, just have the table selected and click on remove. So I'm just going to click OK. When I click on OK, you can see that my legal table has been appended and a step has been applied here as appended queries. So more tables, I have bring in the product table. So you, for example, I bring in the product and I bring in the sales table to this. So whenever we talk of append queries has 2 options. Either append queries as new means bring to, it simply means that for you to append queries, it means bring 2 or more tables into a single existing table. So this table was already existing. I just brought in product management and sales into this table. So if I had selected append as new, I will just see a new query here. But we will do append as new when we want to do merge. We'll see also for new. So moving forward, let me just quickly recap. When you want to append your table, make sure your column headers are the same, your column data types are the same. So moving forward, we have seen how to append queries. So I can just add this to append, let's just say AQ, capitalize AQ, append queries. So we have appended these queries by bringing in these existing 2 tables into this table. So having said that, the next data transformation we want to carry out, we're going to carry out merge query. So I'm just going to have that selected. I'm going to click on open. So I'm just going to have the cities and the transaction table selected. I'm just going to click on OK. Okay, do I have a question? Moving forward, we are going to briefly talk about append queries. When we append queries, what do we really mean by appending queries? I don't know if you're familiar with joins in SQL. When we talk of appending queries, join simply means we get to use joins. Join is similar to append queries in Power BI. So to merge, not append, rather, what am I saying append? I'm repeating append. I'm so sorry about that. When we talk of append, merge, not append, what am I saying? Rather, when we talk of merge queries is similar to SQL joins in SQL. So we are talking with Power BI for now. Merge queries joins two existing tables based on matching values from one or multiple columns. Merge queries don't need the same column headers. They should, for you to be able to merge these two tables together, there should be something similar with them for you to merge it together. So I'm going to go ahead. I am my cities table. I'm just going to use the first row as headers. So my cities table, we have city, we have state, we have region. On my transaction table, we have customer name, segment, city, sales, and quantity. So for me to match these two tables together, this is just a question. So I'll be looking at the chat box. I can't be the only one talking. Let me see that you are following. For me to be able to match this query together, like I earlier said, there has to be something common. There have to be a common column between these two tables. There have to be a matching values, either with one or more columns. So I'm just going to go by the preview. This is the transaction table. We have the column name, the segment, city, sales, and quantity. And I'm going to go over to the cities table. We have city, state, and region. So I want to match the city table and the transaction table together. What is that common column between them? What is that column that would enable me to match these two tables together? So I'm just going to be looking at the chat box. I want to see if you have an answer to that. Okay, yes, that's correct. You could be the one teaching me today. So it's a city column, and I'm grateful that you are following me. So having said that, I'm just going to, we worked previously with append, we work with append. So this time around, we also have two columns, two selection, either append queries and append queries as new. For append queries is going to append this transaction, is going to append this city table into the existing table, which is the transaction table. But append queries as new is going to give us a new query entirely. So currently we have 6 queries selected. So we are going to use the drop down and select append queries as new, merge queries as new. Oh my God, sorry that I'm using append. For merge queries as new, I'm just going to use the drop down. They're going to ask me table to merge. I'm going to select the city table. For the city table, I'm going to have my city selected and also going to have my city selected here. So you can see the selection matches 13 of 13 rows from the first table. Do I have a question? Let me finish this and I'll attend to your question. So what is that? What matches this? They don't need to have the same column headers. They just need, just like in, sorry that I'm trying to digress, in SQL where we have primary and we have primary keys and so on. So for it to be able to merge two tables together, for example, you can have a primary to foreign key or you can have foreign key to primary key. That's outside the scope of our study. So I have my city table to my city table. This is the column that is related. So I'm just going to click on OK. So when I click on OK, you see it is not matching transactions. It's not matching cities. The match is not happening inside here. The match is happening, is giving us match as new. So I'm just going to replace this to match. Let's just say match. Anyhow, let us leave it as match anyway. So I'm just going to leave it as match. So whenever you match, before I open this bracket, so whenever you have a table, I'll be coming to your questions. Please, I don't forget what I want to say. I talk a lot, sorry, don't mind me. So whenever we want to match a table together, append, what append does, let me come over this again, which is what legal AQ. Append is stacking rows of data, it's stacking it, it's like stack. That That is what Append does, is stacking the rows for you. So instead of us having just 7 rows, you could see we had 7 rows, where we had how many rows? 6 rows. Append would stack more rows for us. So instead of having 7, 9, and so we had 22 rows of data. It is the addition of rows to our tables. But when we talk of merge, in cities, we had just 3 columns. Transactions, we had how many columns? Just 5 columns. What merge does rather, merge is going to add more rows of columns to your data. It adds columns. Append does what? Add rows. So I hope that's also easier for you to understand. So on my page newly created query, I'm going to expand this column. Can't I minimize this? So I'm going to expand this. You see this double arrow on the cities. These double arrows contains tables in this column. So I'm just going to expand these double arrows. For this double arrow, we match it using the city. We match it using the city. So I'm going to uncheck this first of all. I'm going to select states. We need states. We need region. So I'm going to uncheck use original column names as perfect. I don't need the city. We already have city here. We just want the states that the customers are coming from. We also want to see the region that the customers are coming from. So I'm just going to click OK. So having done that, you're going to see we have state and we have region. So for a data types, like I said, this is decimal numbers. You can see we have decimal number 4.28, 14.9. This is just to tell you that data types are a representation of what you have on your columns. So we also saw data types for quantity, where we have numeric 2, 3, and so on. So yes, let me attend to questions before I move on to the next. Yes, Append. Why do you need to merge 2 tables in Power BI? What if you were working in a company? You cannot be working with, say, this data set is just, how do I put it? This data set is, for example, you might be importing data from, they can give you different data sources from CSV. Maybe you're working in an hospitality, a kind of hospital data set. They might give you text from CSV, they may give you from Excel. You need to append. If these columns have, yes, there's something I'm going to talk about, because I just remember something in Microsoft. Yeah. So if you have these 2 columns together, there's no point of you loading transactions and cities. There's no point of me loading this table, and there is no point of me loading this table when what I need from this table in these cities is just the state and region. So we also going to further talk about when what I want. There's something I'm trying to remember, pardon me. When what I want is just cities and transactions. So if you are trying to load your data into Power BI, your system could be lagging. In fact, for someone to view the report, they'll be struggling to view the report because of the data is too, I don't know, that's how they call it in Microsoft. The data is too bulky. When I was taking my exams, is how they call it. I think I forgot the terms. So for you to reduce the complexity of your data, you have to make sure you extract valuable. What do you want from this column? What I need in the cities, I just want the state and the region. So why am I going to load cities and transaction columns again? Meanwhile, I can just merge these 2 tables together to give me just a table, to give me just this table. So why do I need to load cities and transactions together? If I remember that term before the class end, I'll let you know. I'm still trying to remember that term. because you might be working with performance analyzer. Well, anyway, that's just really outside for today's class. You might be working with performance analyzer and your data would be too large. They're telling you, oh, this Excel file is too large. Can you reduce the size of this data sets? So you try to like, oh, now what similarities columns do I have? Do I have to merge? You start looking at, do I have to merge? Some cases, do I have, instead of using just measures, do I have to use DAX functions? Do I have to use variables? So I don't know if I've answered your questions. It's just about the complexity of your data. Yes, thank you very much. This is what I was looking for, the load time of your data. Yes, in order to reduce the load time of your data. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you very much. To reduce the load time. So your data might be taking too long to load. So that's why you try to, reduce the complexity of that data. It might be that you might be working with Core i3 laptop, and before your data could load in Core i3 laptop, it could take that to, I don't even know whichever hours, but let's simply move on. I did not delete anything. I've not deleted anything. If I'm supposed to load this data into Power Query Editor, Power BI Editor, for these cities and transactions that I'm not making use of, I'll just right click and input. I'll just untick this column of enable load. I'll just uncheck this column. If I'm to load this data, I'll just untick this column of enable load. So I'm not loading the data yet. Let's finish. When I'm done, we'll also try to load the data. So having said that, the next importation the next data transformation we want to look at, transpose. If I cannot take all of this due to time, let's go to open. I will not be dwelling much of So transpose is basically converting rows into columns. So this is let me just give you a preview of how this is going to look like. This is a gender column. This is department column. This is salary, location, and rating. This is how I want the structure to look like. At the end of the class, I'm so sorry, I'm going to share all the files I have used, mostly the data set. So for the transpose, this is a preview of what if you are giving a data in this format? Do you have a question? This one, I'm always seeing your hands being raised all the time. I have not deleted any column. I don't delete when I'm working. I have not deleted anything. I feel we actually need to check for unit identity. Okay, I think I'm coming to that. So let me just move on. So what if you are giving a data in this format? And you are asked that you are giving a data in this format. You see, I'm having gender, department, salary, location. They should not take these rows. They should not be in row. They should not be arranged in a row-like way. Gender should take its own column. Department should take its own column. Location should take its own column. This is how it should look like. So this is how I want my data to look like. Gender, department, salary, location, and rating. So I'm just going to go ahead to click on the transpose. I'm going to check this. I'm going to click on OK. So having done that, I'm just briefly I've talked about for transpose, I gave you a definition that when we transpose our data, transpose simply means I don't know if you are familiar with metrics. I don't know if you're familiar with it's further math. I don't know if you're familiar with metrics in further math. You should have done that either your first degree math and thereabout. So if you are familiar with that, you will see that we learned transposed in secondary school where we had 3 by 3. So that 3 times 3, we had 4 4/3, and so on. So most of the mathematical functions you were taught, you also get to apply it in data analysis. Moving forward, I have my gender, I have my male, my females, I already have them as column headers. So for me to transpose this column, I'm going to simply move on to, on my transform tab, I'm going to click on transpose data. For transpose data, I'm just going to go over that again. So what if we had just column 1, column 2, and so on? First of all, make sure that you promote your column headers for transposing. When you are done promoting your column headers, just go on your transform tab and select transpose, and you'll see that your data has department, salary, and location. So I'm just going to go ahead, use first row as headers. So I don't know if you have a question with transpose. Transpose, basically, I'm just going to talk about it in mathematical terms. It rotates your table 90 degrees. So you already know what 90 degrees is. Turning your rows into columns and your columns into rows. So having imagined this table, for example, let's go over that again. Let's come back here. So having imagined this table, so let me come to, let's go to navigation. This is how our data was. So Power BI automatically promoted the headers for us. So having done that, you go to your transform tab, click on transpose, and as you could see, transpose this table, treating rows as columns and columns as rows. So whenever you click on transpose in Power BI, it rotates your table 90 degrees turning your tables into columns and your columns into rows. So I don't know if I have another question. We are just going to move on to the next one. How do you share your dashboard with him? We'll be coming to that in more detailed when we were working on visualization and sharing reports. Of course, you can share your dashboard. I talked about it yesterday. So if we're absent in the class, we'll talk about it before the Power BI track in. So moving forward, the next importation, we want to import, let's see, the next data transformation rather, we want to do Excel workbook. We're going to look at pivots. So let's have that selected. For unpivot columns, I'm just going to have this selected, and this is just a preview of our data. Going to click on OK. So in Power Query, you can transform your columns into attribute value paired, where columns becomes headers. For an example, you can see that I have my gender column, I have my gender column, I have my department column. And this is basically, this is dates. So we have the first one, that's for January 2022, February 2022, and so on. So this is more like, it's just into one column, where we say the first row text dates and the second row text salary. So we want to change this into salary and dates. So for us to do that, we use the Unpivot option in the Transform tab to do that. So I'm going to have first of all, I'm going to use first row as headers. So I'm just going to click on the drop down. I'm just going to use first row as headers. When I use first row as headers, I'm going to have my gender column and my departments column selected. I go to the transform tab and I'm going to select. I have two options. On pivot columns means on pivot these two columns that I have selected. On pivot other columns means keep these two columns that I have selected and on pivot these other columns. So I'm just going to on pivot other columns. So you can see I have attributes and I have values. So I'm just going to quickly rename this, and we're also going to change this to a date format. So let's rename that to date, from attributes to date. And these are my values. You can see that my date data types is not accurate. So I cannot have ABC in this column. So I'm just going to change it to ABC. I'm just going to change it to date. So I use the drop down and I'm going to select date. So you can see that accurately I've selected a date. So let's say paraventure. Let's say peradventure we had date and time in this column. You will go ahead so that your data, while loading your data, you always go ahead to split. It's not advisable to have date and time in the same column. It's always advisable to have a date column separately from the time column. So moving forward, the next data transformation step we want to carry out is going to be, let me go to transform, home tab, data source, Excel workbook. On pivot is just the reverse of pivot. So I'm already against time. So let's just look at group by. So your assessment, you're going to do the pivots for me. That's your assessment. So let's quickly look at group by before my times elapses. So we are going to have group by 1 selected, and we're also going to have group by 2 selected. So I'm just going to click OK. I should have done 1. I'm just going to do 1 and leave the other one for you. For this option, I'm going to work with, first of all, with the group by 1. So for this option, I'm going to have my, when we talk of group by, what do we really mean by group by in Power Query? So that's what we are going to look at. How do you want to group your columns by? This is good because you are trying to reduce the complexity of your data. So this is where you use the group by option. So having said that, I'm going to simply, a group by is more like summarizing your data. So I'm going to say group by name. I don't want to see Godwin PS good. I'm having, for example, let's calculate Godwin PS good, Godwin PS good. We have 3 and 2. So grouping by name is going to give me Godwin. It's going to count it once and give me a total for quantity of 5. That's what I mean by group by practically. So let's go back. Let's go practically to that. And I'm going to use the group by option on my transform tab. Your transformation, you see I'm not cleaning. This is data transformation where you change. You want your data the way you want it to look like. So I'm going to click on group by. This is also done to reduce the storage of your data. So for my new column name, so this is, I want to group by customer name. I don't want to have them separately, Raslav Visby, Raslav Visby. So I want to group them by the name. So instead of having 13 columns, rather 13 rows, I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I should just have 8 rows. I'm going to save by name, new column. Let's just leave it at count for now. Operation, I need sum. So sum which column? We're going to say, we're going to sum quantity. No, I'm going to use advanced option rather, because I want to group both the cells and the quantity together. So for the basics, if you were just working with just, you want to sum only the quantity. This way you get to choose only quantity. I want to sum two columns together. So you can add a new group if you want to. So count, that's a new column. Quantity, sum quantity, customer column name should be cells. So I go to add aggregation. New column could just be, let's just say count to. Anyhow, we can just leave the default name. So let's say quantity QIT. So I can call this total. So for count rows, we're just going to use the sum function. The table to reference is going to be quantity column, and I'm just going to click OK. So you'd see previously, if we did not group, previously we had sales quantity, Charles, Bonnell, Godwin, Peace. So it's going to, grouping means how do you want it to look like? I simply mean just sum this for me. For quantity, just sum it for me. If you did not need the sum function, I could just use these settings. This one that looks like year, I can change this to, let's say we want to take average of these, or I can just say, okay, let's say I want to take average, but anyone, you want to take average of them, and I can just click OK. Oh my God. So let's go back. I'm having errors, so let's just leave it at sum. Okay, let me delete this step. Let me just, oh, because I have these two selected, that's why I'm having the error. So I'm just going to have this customer name selected, group by advanced feature. Let's just leave it there. Count any operator you want to use. Let's say cells quickly. Add aggregates. Let's say quantity QTY. Sum. I can say quantity. So when I click on OK, instead of me having it differently, like two, you see, for just look at Peace Good. 2 plus 5, 3 plus 2 will give us 5. That's how you have a total. It's going to give you a total of Peace Good 5. Look at Rasla. We have 4, 6. 4 plus 6 is 10. We have 13. 13 plus 5, we have 18. So for Rasla, you're going to see a total of 18 here. So I hope you do I've said your assessment. You're going to do the for pivot, I'm also going to do for group by 2. So moving forward quickly, I'm just going to end the class in a few minutes. I'm just going to take in data from a new source, Excel workbook. I'm going to use splits. I'm just going to click on open. So we'll be working with splits and merge together. So this is us matching these two already. This is matched already. This is us matching these two. We have element promote default header. Use first. The column name will be descriptive. So this is customer name. We have Rasla Chills Bonnell. Let me uncheck on my view tab. Let me just uncheck column profile. So you can see what if we want to split this column together? We want to split these two columns. We don't want to have full name. We want to have first name and last name. How do we go about that? On my home tab, I go to split column. On split column, I'm going to choose the option of by delimiter. By delimiter, automatically, we have the leftmost delimiter on the left-hand side, where we have chase, we have rightmost delimiter, and we have each occurrence of the delimiter. Because we are splitting this by space, you can see automatically we are splitting this by space. So you can choose to split, maybe for example, either if we had date and time columns together, you can choose to split by, I think it's always either a comma or so. Whatever you have, whatever character you have, either a comma, colon, equal sign, whatever you have to split by, you can split. So custom is the type you want for yourself. Maybe you have something like apostrophe, you can split by that, but we don't want that. So automatically we want to split by space. But because we have space in between Chase and Bonnell, so I'm going to have my, even if I should select the leftmost delimiter, it's still correct, because if I should go from the left hand side, there is a space. Even if I should choose on the rightmost side, there is still a space. If I'm coming from Bonnell axis, there is still a space. So even if I should choose each occurrence of the delimiter, anyway, each occurrence simply means anywhere you see space, split. Go to the next one. Anywhere you see space, split. So we're just going to leave it at that, and I'm going to click on OK. And Chase and Bonnell has been splitted. You can quickly rename these to last name and rename it to last name if you want to. I can rename this quickly to, let's say, first name. I should have duplicated that column anyway. So if you want to merge these two columns together, just have this selected. If you want to merge it together, so if you want to merge these two columns together, just have this first name and last name selected, and you see an option for merge column. So if I should click on merge column, when you merge, have it selected. Separator is asking me, how do I want to separate these two columns? I should have duplicated this data, sorry. Let me click on cancel and duplicate it so that, let me duplicate. Okay, yeah, I have duplicate here. So let's duplicate the data. So let's merge these two columns together. I have my first name selected. That's still loading. You see, it's always taking load time. I have my first name and my last name selected. I right click. I'm going to click on merge columns. It's going to ask me separator. How do you want it to be separated? If I should click on none, it means these two columns would be merged. It's joining together, you could see. So if I should come back to this icon and I should rather click on, let's say space, you can say comma. I just click on OK. You just play around with it. You can say comma. So if you want to split these two columns together, quickly go to by delimiter and automatically you can see split comma. So that is it. So let's return back to this here icon. I'm just going to say merge by space. So you can give it new column like names of customers. I'm going to click OK. So I'm going to attend to questions in a few minutes. That's all we have for today. So once again, thank you for joining me for this amazing session. I hope you enjoyed my class today. So I'm just going to be attending to questions. I can switch this back up.
Okay, thank you very much. Awak, kindly confirm you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much for this well delivered class. I'm very sure that everyone on this call have learned seriously, and then with time, we can say that we are data analysts with Power BI. So because of our time, we spent 5 minutes past the usual time, and I can see that there are a lot of questions on pivot table, what it is PC spec needed for desktop Power BI, and then there are a lot of questions that we'll not be able to handle now. Okay, but this is what we're going to be doing. Everyone, our work is on our Telegram group, and she will be attending to these questions there. So kindly go to the Telegram group and drop your questions. Those joining us on YouTube, you can also join the Telegram group and ask your questions from there, so that she can pick up those questions and answer them as necessary. So thank you, everyone. Please, with your favorite emoji, I wanted to celebrate our work for this good job. And yes, please, I wanted to come in before we call it a day today. Please, okay, good. Thank you very much, Awak. And everyone, please, I wish you a fulfilled day. So do take care of yourself. See you tomorrow, same time, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Okay, take care of yourself and bye bye. Bye, everyone.